Have you ever thought about buying a 300ZX and then the thought immediately jumped into your head about how much of a pain it is to work on these cars and how cramped the engine bay is? Cry about it. Look, I'm here to tell you that there are some things that you can do to simplify this car like you would any other Japanese import car from the 90s. Factory RB26 GTRs are not fun to work on in factory form, just like this car. As a matter of fact, they share a lot of similar parts. And I'm here to give you 5 game-changing modifications that you can do to this car, to this motor and engine bay, that'll make your life a lot easier and save you a ton of money and time. So follow along with me today. There's gonna be a lot of hard pills to swallow, and some of these are some steep hurdles that you gotta get past mentally. It's all part of the process. So if I could go back in time and redo this car over, these are the modifications that I would do to it, pretty much starting from ground zero. So follow along, let's pay close attention today because I got some good stuff for you guys. But first, a little project update. So obviously I've been working on the Z car. That's what a lot of you are here for. But if you've been following me for a while, you know I also have a Honda CRX out there. That little yellow turd thing. It was a B20 VTEC and it had a nasty noise. I sent the head off to the machine shop, long story short. I finally got the head back after about 4 weeks. So we're gonna be making a video about that today as well after I finish this one because I'm kind of falling behind on my video schedule, and the plan was to have one out every week, and I went for like 14 weeks straight, and I'm struggling to keep up at this point. I'd actually cleaned up, pressure washed my whole engine bay again, but I deleted a lot of my PTU harness because I'm running R35 coil packs on this motor. We don't need a PTU for R35 coil packs. Follow along today for more. Now obviously when you get the car and you want to start modifying it, you can do the light modifications first. So with light modifications, I'm referring to an air filter, I'm referring to a turbo back exhaust. Turbo back exhaust is where it kind of gets questionable. You may need a tune after that, but I think you'll be all right. You might see a little bit of a boost spike after you do that, so just gotta be really cautious. Definitely get an AFR gauge. As long as your air fuels are all right, typically on a stock motor, you should be good. So it's taken me a long time to get to this with recording because I'm kind of like hyped up on NOS right now. I've got my energy drink fixed for the day, so yeah. All right. So number one thing that you guys need to do, I'm gonna group it all into one, but I'm gonna tell you what they all are, is delete everything that doesn't need to freaking be there. Most of it is on the intake manifold. Now, because we're primarily focusing on the motor, that's what I'm going to talk about. But I will throw in some things here in the car itself that will help you along the way. Now, this is focusing on primarily a twin turbo setup, not an NA, because some of the stuff you may not have on an NA setup, or it may be different. If you want to go to twinturbo.net and look up all the deletes, you can do that. There's guides and walkthroughs on how to do all of them, very detailed. It's a website from like 1998 that's still up and going, so props to twinturbo.net. So we've got EGR ports deleted. This is my original intake manifold too, by the way. Probably gonna end up selling it. It's got Rob Z 62mm throttle bodies on it. EGR ports, coolant bypass off the throttle bodies. Some people like to delete the PCV. I personally kept mine because I like ventilated crankcase. Like blocking off your crankcase is not that good, and I kept mine. Although on my new setup, I'm not running a PCV, so it's up to you. You can still be okay with just your breathers, but run a catch can. So those are the 3 primary things off the intake manifold. Those are some basic things over there. So on these cars from the factory, there's a fuel pressure regulator, but there's also a second thing that looks like a regulator, but it's actually a fuel pressure damper. Go ahead and just rip that out, throw it in the bin, and then just run a hose straight to your fuel system. I can't remember where exactly it goes. That was like 12 years ago that I did it. I haven't done one recently. Okay, so number 2, and number 2 is gonna be kind of a hard pill to swallow because it's steep. It's steep, and I know you guys aren't going to want to hear this, but this is the truth. You're going to want to get a standalone ECU. Get one with an onboard map sensor, like the Haltech or a Link. Those are my 2 go-tos anymore. A lot of people that have gotten Link recently say just go ahead and get the Haltech. So I'm going to say go ahead and get the Haltech. I personally went with the Platinum Pro. It's an older ECU, but it still does way more than you'll ever need to do for my particular build. The only thing I'm missing on the Haltech Platinum that I wish I had is long-term fueling. Well, there's two things: long-term fueling and rolling anti-lag. So like, hear me out with the standalone thing. Like, think about it like as if you were gonna go buy a Mark IV Supra. Are you really gonna cheap out on an ECU? I mean, come on, ditch the selling, scrap the MAF, throw the boost controller in the bin, get rid of all that. There's like $1,000+ right there in electronics. Just get rid of it. It's not worth it. Now the reason for the Haltech is it simplifies so much. So you get an onboard map sensor. So what that means is you can run speed density and map, manifold absolute pressure, instead of a MAF, which is mass airflow. With a map, it's right on the manifold, and you don't have to worry about vacuum leaks. If you blow off a charge pipe, you don't have to worry about limping at home or trying to fix the charge pipe just to get home. So now also with the Haltech, what you're essentially doing, you're switching from that old 1989 ECU to a newer ECU that is its own software and everything else. So it's free software to download. You don't have to go buy the consult cable. You don't have to go buy the license for the ECU if you want to modify it yourself. If you want to modify a Haltech yourself, if your tuner didn't lock it down, or if you want to learn to tune, you can. That's what I did. I learned to tune on my Haltech, and well, I had a little bit prior experience with Honda Chrome and whatnot, but it was quite a learning experience, but it was good. It was very good to learn, and every time I modify my car now, I can make the adjustments myself instead of having to go find somebody else to do it. So you lose your MAF, you lose the MAF selling MAF translator. It's $300. I think now they're like $500 if you can find any. Vacuum leaks, you don't have to worry about vacuum leaks. Boost controller, you don't have to worry about buying a boost controller because the ECU will do everything for you, and unless your tuner locks you out, you can change it yourself. That right there is about $1,100 to $1,200 easily worth of stuff, depending on where you get it from and who you know. And that's kind of the gist of where I went with mine, because you can try to run a factory ECU and get all this extra stuff and then still spend the same amount of money as if you would have just bought a Haltech from the get-go. As a matter of fact, I tell everyone I can, like, if I could go back in time, Haltech would easily be one of the first modifications I would do to this car. Even if it's 100% stock, I would put a Haltech in it. In my opinion, it runs better. It can run better if it doesn't. And it's just so much more information that you can see on it, which I love. And it's a hell of a learning curve, but it's very easy to learn on and very easy to work with. So now that we got that big purchase out of the way, we're going on to number 3. So the third most important thing that you could use or need, or I recommend you getting to simplify your life and to not leave you stranded, would be top feed injectors. That's right. Take your side feed fuel injectors and throw them straight into the bin. They're trash. It's 2023. Stop trying to make them work. Just don't even worry about it. The Nismo's 750cc go-to injector, just throw them away. Top feed injectors have better fuel atomization. They're twice as efficient. They have an excellent spray pattern depending on which one you get. You can even get top feed injectors that are cheaper than the side feed injectors, and they're twice as efficient. Now you have a couple options, and I'm going to go through those roughly right here, because we got the under plenum ones include Polar Engineering and Merlin Machining. Now the problem with this is if you ever need to change out an injector, being that you're switching to top feed fuel injectors, you should never have to unless you're upgrading them. So my personal opinion would be go with the under plenum fuel injectors. The other options are the top of the plenum fuel injectors, which you have Wind Factory and BDE. Now my first top feed fuel rail setup was the BDE top feed fuel rails. They're beautiful. They're CNC'd pieces. Get a whole set of 1000cc injectors for $300. They're Bosch EV14s. They're not a crazy injector, but it's the same base injector that all the top fuel injector companies start with. So My personal suggestion now is switch to Polar Engineering or the Merlin Machining under plenum fuel rails, which is exactly what I have here. These are Merlin Machining. They're beautiful. They're CNC aluminum. They're anodized black. Each one is a little bit different. They have their own styling, but that's what I went with. And I'm running Fuel Injector Clinic 1650 cc injectors, and they idle better than my Deechworks 550 injectors from 10 years ago ever did. Okay, so for number 4, this is gonna be a real space opener on the car. Whenever everyone opens the engine bay, the first thing they say is, oh my God, there's no room to work on this, you know, cramped engine bay jokes, so on and so forth. Look, again, it's 2023. Let's modernize this car and say electric fans need to be installed. It's no longer a question of, oh, they're not efficient. Oh, they don't flow enough air. Again, it's 2023. Run an electric fan. My personal choice was a Spal, I think a 2206 or something like that, and I made my own fan shroud. If you switch to an electric fan, please, for the love of God, run a fan shroud. If you don't run a fan shroud, you're gonna have issues. So switch to an electric fan, plug it into your Haltech. So again, because you have a Haltech, you don't need to go buy a fan controller. You wire it into a relay, you wire it to your Haltech, tell the Haltech, hey, I'm running an electric fan, turn it on at this temperature, and you're good. So there's more money saved by running a Haltech. And with switching to an electric fan, there's less rotational mass that's being taken from the motor. Less rotational mass. More rotational mass that is being lifted off the engine, because now your engine's not trying to spin a freaking airplane prop in the front of it. It'll probably free up about 2 to 5% more power from your motor by switching to an E-fan. Something to consider. But yeah, my fan runs great. I keep it between 185 and 195 for temperatures, and the motor loves it. I've never had any issues with it. Not even close. I mean, granted, I am running a two-row aluminum Howe intercooler. I think it's a Howe. Koyo. I'm running a Koyo radiator. Alright, so by now you're probably figuring out why I put a Haltech at number 2 on the list, because everything that goes on after that is based off having that Haltech. So for number 5, and for some of you this might seem like a far stretch, but for me it was most certainly one of my favorite upgrades, and with recent modifications that have come to market, makes this even better. So number 5 is going to be coil pack upgrades. Now I am running the R35 coil pack upgrade from Polar Engineering. He has his own bracket with bolts, modifications, all that needed to run this coil pack setup on a factory intake manifold. So the thing with Polar Engineering is these coil packs sit beneath the intake manifold. You can get rid of the PTU harness, you can get rid of the PTU, which frees up more space in your engine bay, so you don't have your PTU hanging here, and you don't have to worry about relocating it to wherever you're gonna relocate it, which will probably ingest water and fail eventually anyways. So for the peace of mind and for the love of God, get rid of your 30-year-old ignition system and switch to an ignition system that was made in the last decade. Now if you don't want to put them beneath the plenum and you think, oh, every time I have to swap out my spark plugs I have to pull my intake manifold, Brett Dempsey Engineering makes conversions such that you can have your coil packs sit on top of the intake manifold in the factory location. That's something to consider also. I can't recommend these coil packs enough. They're 3-wire, just like the factory ones, so you don't technically have to run extra wires. All you have to do is repin the wires that are existing into new connectors. RB26 guys run them all the time. Even the 2Js are starting to run them. The R35 cars run them up to like 2,000 horsepower. So this will be the be-all end-all for this motor. Now obviously there are a couple more honorable mentions which I'm going to get to right here, and this one's kind of like, it's tough because as you modify your car you're gonna need to modify this anyways. I personally didn't even do it, but I can't suggest this enough because it'll save you a lot of headache and diagnosis in the end, and that's going to be replacing your engine harness. You can go buy a Wiring Specialties Z32 engine harness. Make sure you check all the right boxes for those stuff that you have. If you have the original harness in your car, get rid of it now. You're gonna have problems. Any 30-year-old Japanese car that is gonna run its factory harness, you're gonna run into issues. By upgrading the engine harness, you're gonna save a lot of time with diagnosing the car, diagnosing problems, because you're not gonna be looking for breaks in the engine harness, faulty connectors, so on and so forth. It's 2023. These cars are getting old. Any Japanese car you get nowadays, you're gonna need to replace the engine harness sooner, if not later, if it hasn't already been replaced. I can't recommend that enough. So, for the love of God, replace your engine harness. All right, you guys, I guess it's gonna do it. Those are my 5 pro tips for simplifying your 300ZX VG30 motor. Hope that helps some of y'all out. If you want to follow along with my build, I actually have 2 motors right here that I'm getting ready to work on one. I got finished putting this Honda motor together today. So if you want to follow along, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we'll catch y'all next time.